Welcome to all of our attendees. Welcome to November of 2022. I'm sure many of you are sitting there thinking, how has it happened so quickly? But I guess it's something that we say all the time. So this morning's Toolbox Talk, as we take a look at skin cancer, we always start off with the tips to prevent COVID-19. We have heard of the resurgence of COVID-19 and popping up again and again. And so we just want to encourage you to please do your best to continue to wash your hands regularly for 20 seconds with soap and water. If this isn't available, but also a good idea to keep some with you, alcohol-based hand sanitizer, so that you can frequently sanitize your hands after touching objects so that you do not get that cross-contamination from workplaces or even things that others might have touched, handrails, doorknobs, buttons, etc. And then avoid touching your eyes, nose, or mouth if you haven't washed your hands yet. Adhere to social distancing measures and please avoid close contact with people who are sick. And then cover your cough or sneeze with a flexed elbow or a tissue, and then make sure you discard that tissue into the bin. If you can, try and do this as regularly as possible, cleaning and disinfecting frequently touched objects and surfaces. This would include things like tools, anything in and around our cab or vehicles, and then make sure that the cross-contamination from the sites that we are going onto, if you are not in charge of looking after those frequently touched objects and services, no doubt the owners of the companies where you are working, your clients, they should have these protocols in place. But just to ensure that you keep yourself safe, just use some alcohol-based hand sanitizer, perhaps after touching those surfaces. And if you are able to, please do your part and get vaccinated. So this morning's Toolbox Talk, as we mentioned last week, we are looking at skin cancer. So throughout this month, we're going to be looking at various topics. Next week, we're looking at basic first aid. What should we be doing on site using our first aid kits? And which type of first aid kit do we need? You've heard of a Regulation 3 and a Regulation 7 first aid kit. What are they? What is the difference between them? Where do we even find Regulation 7? Which regulation are we talking about? And also then moving over to firefighting. What is basic firefighting? There we will learn the PASS method for all our fire extinguishers. And that's something that you should already know. So this will just be a good reminder to help us while we are on site. We then also look at your emergency evacuation, either done by yourselves or if it's going to be a site-specific emergency evacuation. And then we'll end off the month with driving, obviously always taking a look at how we behave on the roads. It's very important because it can save a life, especially if you are the one driving. So the safety thought for this week: plan, do, check, act. When it comes to cancer, we always want to make sure that we've planned ahead. What is the weather looking like for this week? Have you made sure that you've checked where you're working, how long you're going to be working outside, and have you ensured that you've prepared for the cover that you might need to take because of the sun that's going to be out there? So skin cancer is no joke. Obviously, we know this. Most skin cancers are caused by too much exposure to ultraviolet light or UV light. Now, UV is an invisible kind of radiation. It comes from the sun, it comes from tanning beds or even sun lamps. UV rays can damage your skin cells. So protection from UV ray is very important. But we must remember that it's not just during summer that we actually want to protect ourselves. We want to protect ourselves all year around. It's just that during summertime, certain things happen that we are more prone to doing. And that's what we want to discuss today, especially for those of you who are working out on site. A lot of us go out and then we're going to be working in excavations. A lot of plumbing work takes place outside on buildings, where a lot of installations are being done on the outside of buildings. And because you're working, you're getting hot, you're building up a bit of a sweat. Sometimes, an ice cold glass of water cools us down, but we forget that we're still standing in the sun. Now, a lot of us will wear hard hats while we are working, and that at least gives us some sort of protection. But what other protection are you taking in order to prevent this long-term killer from affecting you and your employees? There's something that we should actually remember, that UV or ultraviolet radiation is a source of energy that is released naturally. So it's going to happen every single day. In fact, as soon as the sun is out, you are already exposing yourself to UV. It doesn't only come out during summer. It also is artificially from any sunbed. So if you do go to tanning salons, tanning beds, things like that, which I'm not sure if any of you do, but you will probably be exposed to the natural light all the time. Now, there are two main types of UV rays that damage our skin. Both of them can cause skin cancer. You get UVB, which is responsible for most sunburns. So if you've ever been out into the sun and you've perhaps burnt your skin and it's itchy or a little bit sensitive, you've got that sunburn, you've probably been exposed to too much UVB. Then UVA is the type of UV that penetrates deep into the skin. Now, it takes a little bit longer for this to happen, and obviously the more exposure to the sun, to these ultraviolet lights, the more dangerous it becomes. And because it penetrates into the skin, it starts aging the skin, but it contributes much less to sunburn. So even though you might not be burning the skin or getting sunburn, it might just be looking like a mild tan, or perhaps your skin just feels a lot warmer while you're out in the sun. You're already contributing to this deep penetration of the skin from UVA. Now, there is a third type of UV ray called UVC. It could be the most dangerous of all. Fortunately, it is completely blocked out by our ozone layer and doesn't reach the Earth's surface. Now, you might think to yourself, well, if that's the most dangerous of all, we don't want to expose ourselves to it. So as a side note, if we are looking after the ozone layer, we are definitely contributing to ourselves not getting skin cancer a lot quicker, not burning a lot quicker, or exposing ourselves to this type of dangerous UVC. But let's continue talking about UVB or UVA, and we're going to just use ultraviolet radiation or UV to denote both of them. So both of these UVB and UVA is going to be dangerous for us. Now, you can't tell whether you are at risk of burning by the temperature outside. And this is because you cannot feel UV rays, but people can still burn on cool or cloudy days, even if the UV index for your area is only 3. So that's quite low. Generally speaking, when we take a look at our weather conditions, we always want to look at how much rain is coming, because that's going to prevent us from perhaps working outside. We're going to look at the direction of the wind and how fast the wind is going to be going, because that could potentially affect us working at heights. But do we look at the actual temperature of the sun, especially now, 34, 35, 36 degrees, sometimes 40 degrees outside? And at some point, we have to say to ourselves, you need to protect yourself now from this very dangerous UV. So how can UV then actually cause skin cancer? So too much UV radiation from the sun, or even sunbeds, what it does is it damages the DNA in your skin cells. So the DNA tells your cells how to function. If enough DNA damage builds up over time, it can cause cells to start growing out of control, which leads to skin cancer. And that's why sometimes people will then start getting little blotches on the skin. You'll start getting little moles appearing. And that is because the DNA on that area has damaged enough. Sometimes even the pigment starts to lose or start to go out of control. And that's where you get areas of patchy skin where sometimes it's lighter than at other parts. And that is because of the damage of that skin cell. Now, because that damage is already there, and remember, the UVA and UVB are both contributing to either a deep cell damage or a skin burn. So you're basically getting two types of damage to your skin. Now, this is something you must understand. Anyone can develop skin cancer, but some people can have a higher risk, including people who burn more easily. Now, if you do burn easily, please take even more precautions. So it's important to remember that skin damage doesn't only happen on holiday. It doesn't only happen during hot, sunny places. The sun is often strong enough to cause damage even when it is cloudy. And that is because the UV rays are constantly moving through the atmosphere and attaching itself to our cells. So whilst we all need some sun to help us make vitamin D for healthy bones, and you'll often hear that, get out, get into the sun. You do need the sun in order to have a healthy body. But please remember that what you need is only minutes in the sun, not hours in the sun. So there's no need to sunbathe or get enough vitamin D, as there is no such thing as healthy tanning. So if you've ever heard of that, I've got a healthy tan, that does not actually exist. Most of us do tan. Myself, I get brown in the sun. We often go down to Durban or down to Cape Town and you spend some time in the sun, but we try and get some good UV protection coating on. The problem is you hop into the ocean and it sometimes washes off. And so you got to constantly remind yourself. So this is what we need to do. We have to constantly remind ourselves about this, especially with the parts of our body that are always exposed. Now, when it's hot, most of us are wearing our work shirts. And so what we want to do is just then protect the arms and the neck and the head that is sticking out. And if you're like me, getting a lot thinner on top of your head, where you're not wearing a hard hat on site, your head could also burn as well. And that's obviously for me, something very dangerous as well, because you do not want to start or sunburn on your bald spot. I can tell you now, it's not very nice and it's super itchy all the time. So does sunburn then cause cancer? So we've heard UV rays, definitely they can cause cancer. But what about sunburn? Now remember, we're talking about a different type of UV. Absolutely, yes, you can still get skin cancer because it increases the risk of cancer when you do get sunburn. Now, sunburn is skin damage, and it's your body's response to trying to repair itself. It is a clear sign that your DNA in your skin cells has been damaged by too much UV. So as soon as you have sunburn, now getting sunburned just once or every 2 years can actually triple your risk of melanoma skin cancer. So that's when the skin will actually start changing pigment, compared to never being burnt. Now, melanoma skin cancer can eventually turn into a more serious type of skin cancer. So did you know that the signs of sunburn can depend on your skin tone? Now, you might have lighter skin people, darker skin people, but sunburn doesn't have to be raw, peeling, or blistering. So if your skin has gone pink or red in the sun, it's sunburnt. For people with darker skin, it may just feel irritated, tender, or itchy. So that's the way you can tell whether you perhaps have had some sort of sunburn. And it is vital that you know those symptoms. And obviously it can be different depending on the different skin tones that we have. So you'll have that range from very light to very dark skin tones, but each of them have their own symptoms of whether you could potentially be burning yourself or getting these dangerous UV rays, essentially just killing off your skin cells. So what should you do then if you are getting sunburned? Well, if you start noticing that you are working out, perhaps you're installing geysers, hydroboils, you putting some piping up on the side of a building, and you notice that your skin's starting to get sensitive while standing in the sun, especially your forearms, the back of your neck, your ears. And please, guys, a lot of people forget the ears. You know, we put on sunscreen, perhaps on our face and on our neck and on our arms, and we forget the ears. And the ears are such a bit of skin that cover the cartilage around it. And so please remember, we want to include the covering of our ears when we do put sunscreen on. So putting on more sunscreen obviously won't help, especially because you are still going to be staying in the sun a lot longer. If you've gotten sunburn already and now you want to put sunscreen on, it's not actually going to be helping you. After sun lotion can help sunburn to feel better, but it's not going to repair any DNA damage. So please remember this. Once you get sunburned, you have already damaged the skin. In other words, it's too late. So you actually don't want to get to that point. What we do want to do is try and cover ourselves up more. And that's where the PDCA comes in. We want to plan, do, check, act. Plan for the week. Have you planned to ensure that you're going to have enough sunscreen before going into the sun. So putting it on in the morning and then regularly throughout the day. If you are able to, I know it gets really hot and you might say to me, Chris, there's no ways I'm going to be able to wear a long sleeve while I am working in the sun. It's just impossible. So I do understand that. Well, you have other methods of shade. There is possible temporary shades that you could put up. There's even, I do a lot of cycling, and so I've got like thin skin armbands that we put on that's actually UV protection armbands, and you don't even feel it on you actually. So it's breathable, it allows air through, it's still very cool while you are walking around or cycling or doing any sort of activity. So even if you're working, the armband still helps, but at least it's protecting you from the sun. Now, what I expose myself mainly to are my hands, because I'm not wearing gloves all the time. And so that's where I'm often putting on, extra sunscreen just to protect the hands from any UV. Now, I'm saying this, but at the same time, I often forget. And so we constantly need these reminders, which might be a good idea to then put it into a policy. Remind ourselves of this in our own Toolbox Talks or our own daily safe task instructions. Remember, if it is a hot day, you're going to be more exposed to the sun over a longer period of time. So perhaps that can then be just part of your safe working procedures. Perhaps it can even become part of PPE. We can start looking at ways to protect ourselves and our employees from the dangers of UV and the sun. Now, please remember, getting sunburned once doesn't mean you will definitely get skin cancer. The more times you get sunburnt, the higher your risk of melanoma skin cancer. So reducing your risk of sunburn and protecting your skin by a combination of things like shade, clothing, and sunscreen. Again, we often want to take a look at what are we doing for the day? What is the scope of work for the day? What is the weather outside, and where are we going to be working? Are we going to be exposing ourselves to this danger? Much like any risk that you are going to experience on site, you need to have some sort of control. So you're going to have your own types of control put in place, but you need to know what they are and you need to act on them appropriately. Remember, skin cancer is going to take a lot of time before it actually shows up, but it can spread. Because melanoma skin cancer can grow down through the layers of skin and spread to other parts of the body. Because it's already damaged those cells, it can start growing in the body or spreading in the body. Now remember, when skin cancer is found at an early stage, treatment is more likely to be successful. So if you've noticed any unusual changes in your skin, any dark marks or moles that might be new, perhaps have changed over time, discoloration, grown bigger, they might have been there for a while, then speak to your doctor. Please get the advice and find out exactly, is it a possibility that you might have early stages of melanoma skin cancer? Try to learn more about melanoma skin cancer symptoms by doing more research on it as well. Speak to your doctor, and if there is a possibility for you to do this, include it, as I mentioned earlier, into your safe working procedures in your company. Make it known, share the information, and give as much information as possible from the company's perspective to the employees. Because remember, it is going to protect them later on in life. Now, nobody wants to dedicate their life to a company and work their whole life through only to be rewarded with things like skin cancer later on. So the time to start protecting yourself is now, is straight away, before we start getting ourselves sunburned or before we start killing off the cells on our body. Now, sunburn obviously is not only painful, but it is dangerous and it does come with consequences. As we've seen through this Toolbox Talk, we can clearly see that UV rays are very dangerous to our body. In fact, they are going to cause DNA damage to the skin. It will accelerate skin aging, and it will increase your lifetime cancer or skin cancer risk. So if you are just sustaining 5 or more sunburns in your youth, so our youth has passed, I know for sure I've sustained 5 or more sunburns when I was young. It has increased my lifetime melanoma risk later on in life by 80%. So if you have children, please protect them now. Take a look at the research as shown in many scientific magazines. Take a look at some of our older ones who are battling now with mild forms of skin cancer, very serious forms of skin cancer, all because of being in the sun too long. Now, I've got one of my favorite uncles who also had a little bit of skin cancer. In fact, it got so bad that part of his nose, his ears, his face had to be removed and then replaced with new skin. It's not something that anybody would want to go through. In fact, he battles every single day with the sensitivity of it, touching it, moving it, feeling it, feeding it in order to keep his skin healthy. All of these routines and rituals that he has to do on a daily basis now to look after the new skin graft that has gone into place. Yet, it is a routine that we should have had from youth up. Now, I've obviously started a lot later in life looking after my skin after seeing something like this, but it should become a natural part of our lives. We should be protecting our families. And if you have young ones, please start doing that now. You don't want to increase their risk of skin melanoma later in life by 80%. Now, if that is already our case, do not add to that percentage. So you might think, well, if it's already 80% worse than what I would have had because my youth is already gone, don't feel like it's too late to start protecting yourself. Remember, there are more severe cases of skin cancer as well. We do not want to get the worst of the worst. So if it's already bad, let's try and protect it and stop it in its track. We do not want it to grow or to spread through our body at all. So prevent sunburn at all cost, especially if we are taking a look at where you are going to be going on holiday this coming year. So perhaps COVID has hit us a bit too hard and there's not a possibility for us to go away on holiday. We might think we're going to go to that good old destination of Romania and we're going to be staying home. Then protect yourself while you're in your gardens. Protect yourself while you're at that fireplace where it's hot enough while you're drying. Don't let the sun cause its damage as well. Wherever you are, whether you're out playing with your children, walking around in the road, or even if you're going to be continually working through this week, through this month, and through the rest of the year, please protect yourself from dangerous and harmful UV rays. So avoid the sun if you can at all during your peak hours from 10 to 2. You might say, well, Chris, that's our working day. How am I going to avoid the sun? Well, do your best. That's all we're saying, is do your best to protect yourself so that you do not have the worst of consequences. Seek shade. Wear clothing with UPF protection or ultraviolet factor protection. Remember, UPF 50 plus helps block out 98% of UVA and UVB rays. Wear sunglasses or safety glasses that have UV protection on them. If possible, find one of those wide-brimmed hats. Many people say, well, they don't look nice. I agree, but neither does skin cancer. In fact, skin cancer looks a lot worse. Always apply sunscreen at least 15 minutes before going outdoors and then throughout the day, even if it is a cloudy or overcast day. Remember, the sun's UV rays can still damage our skin, even on cloudy or seems to be cooler days as well. So please continue to prevent your skin cancer from getting worse. Please prevent your kids, your future from even having the possibility of skin cancer by giving them the protection that they need now. So what do we want to do throughout this week, month, and the rest of the year, especially when we're going to be in hot sunny days, is plan to do the work outside. While we're doing the work, keep yourself protected and keep checking. Has any changes occurred? Are you experiencing any sunburn, any changes to your skin color, or perhaps have had any marks or moles that have pitched up? Go and see a doctor, act on it. And if you're finding that you are getting sunburned on a regular basis, try and act on that now. Try and change it, prevent it from happening, because there are methods of doing that. So we want to say thank you very much for joining our Toolbox Talk this morning. We do really appreciate it. We hope the information has helped you. We're looking forward to the next following weeks coming up in November. And then we're going to be saying very, very soon goodbye to the Toolbox Talks for this year during December or next month. But we really look forward to the December period, obviously a time to spend with our families. But before we do that, we obviously want to end the month off looking at arriving alive, always driving safe. In fact, something that we can do every single day. But it's an initiative, obviously, that we want to do for December. So we want to say thank you once again, and we're going to hand it over back to you, Karim.
Thank you very much, Chris, for this informative session. I believe there are no questions from my side. Chris, anything you'd like to add before we end off the session?
Just a very big thank you to yourself, Karim. And then once again, to all of our OPSA members, if you are registered with PRB, then you can get yourself your 0.25 PRB CPD points. And if you are registered with SIOSH, each Toolbox Talk has got a 1 CPD point allocation. So stay safe out there, and we'll see you next week.